Let's talk about one of the worst things that ever happened in the trucking industry. And it's not a natural disaster. It wasn't government. It was pretty much one man took a great company and managed to drive it into the ground. And he ended up in jail. Well, guys, this is a truly sad story. I was actually around when it happened. I remembered, as many of you probably will too, as a horrible time for a whole bunch of truck drivers. Most of this story is going to be based on a book that was written by a man named Charles Hood. And the book, it has a long title. It's called Big Rigs, Posh Digs, Fast Cars, and Dark Bars. It goes on to say the greed-driven, sex-enhanced ride that cost Arrow Trucking Company $90 million and its life. Yep, we're talking about the fall of Arrow Trucking Company in 2009. So first, let's get started with talking about the original CEO and founder of the company. So the Arrow Trucking Company was actually founded in 1948, and in 1968 it had 6 trucks. That's when it was bought by James Pielsticker. James Pielsticker is a military veteran. I don't remember what branch. He was a military veteran and also a lawyer. And he didn't really like law. He decided he wanted something different, and he had an opportunity to get into the trucking business. And so that's what he did. Over time, he built the trucking company from 6 trucks to over 1,500 trucks. They were based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Jim Pielsticker was known as a great boss. He had an open door policy. He had some of the best benefits. His idea was that he needed to give his employees the best benefits so that they basically wouldn't have to worry about things like that. His pay was average, they say, with the benefits package, and he used to have a waiting list to go to work for Arrow Trucking. They were, I think, 2 or 3 years in a row, they were actually listed as the safest trucking company in America. They had the safest scores of anybody. They say that their maintenance program was second to none. Everything got fixed right away. They said their maintenance, every time a truck pulled in the yard, it would get looked over, no matter what. And so, yeah, very respected man. Suddenly, though, in 2001, just a month after 9/11, he was on a hunting trip with several other Tulsa businessmen. I forget exactly where they were, but yeah, he was on the hunting trip, and he actually died in a plane crash on that. Along with 2 other people. I believe it was the pilot, one of the other businessmen, and I believe there was 3 other men that did live through it. So at that point, that's when things started going downhill for Arrow. So Jim had 2 kids. He had a son and a daughter. The daughter really wasn't involved in the trucking business at all, but neither was the son. Dougie Pielsticker. It's actually James Douglas Pielsticker, but they went by Dougie or Doug. We'll just call him Dougie, because, yeah. Anyway, he had never had a job in his life, ever. He was actually the typical rich kid that had everything handed to him and thought that he was never going to have to work for anything. In fact, they said the only time he ever actually came to Arrow Trucking is he would pull in his Maserati to get his weekly stipend. Or paycheck. I guess he thought maybe it was a paycheck, but he never actually worked for the company. At one point, his dad was going to have him come in and work from the ground up, but they wanted him to work with operations, and he couldn't do it. And they were going to have him, well, he couldn't even drive company vehicles because his driving record was so horrible. But his mom really loved him and had faith in him. Whether this was just stupidity or, wanting the best for her son, who knows. But dad dies, and mom puts the son, who knew nothing about trucking, in charge of the company, the new CEO of the company. Well, immediately, Sorry, I got to look over at some notes, but immediately Dougie took to this role and started getting rid of the executive team, the trusted people that Jim had put in place. He started forcing them to either retire or quit, and in a couple cases, he fired them. He then brought in his own people, who were his CFO, Jonathan Moore, and General Counsel, Joseph Mowry, and put them in place. He also almost immediately redid the lobby at Arrow Trucking because he didn't want his employees to be able to easily get to him. They said it took a double key card just to get into his office, and he knew virtually none of his drivers, whereas they said that his dad was known for trying to remember all the drivers' names, as well as also trying to know the names of their spouses and even their kids. He got to do this through a company picnic that they did every year, which was a pretty big deal. Well, after that, they still did the company picnic because it was pretty big, pretty big thing at Arrow. But Dougie wouldn't attend. He said he didn't want to mix with those people. Interesting. Well, let's see what started happening. Almost immediately, the company started failing. It actually took 8 years total for it to completely flop. But we'll talk about some of the things that happened in between there with this crazy spending. They said Doug was around about half the time. The rest of the time he was on elaborate vacations with his stripper wife. Yes, he was married to a stripper. That was his first wife. After she left him for a woman, he then married the nanny that they had at their house. And I don't know that he's still married. I don't really care. He wasn't around too much. One of the first signs that the company was starting to crumble was that they could not afford maintenance anymore. They were not doing the maintenance on the trucks. They were cutting the programs. They actually got to a point where they were taking parts from trucks that weren't run, or spare trucks that were good, but they would take parts from them trucks and put them on to the other trucks to keep them going. Things started, taking off. It builds up. It just keeps going and going, and nobody would work on their trucks anymore. They couldn't even get tires for the trucks anymore. They were taking tires off of other trucks and putting them on these trucks. So this went on for a number of years. Companies going downhill, and then things really took a turn for the worse because they had no money. They had no money at all. So what they were doing was sending the bills into their bank. So they would send invoices in. Basically, they were factoring and send invoices into the bank for loads that actually they hadn't done. Well, they did them. They would inflate them. They actually had two sets of bills. One would start with an A. The other one would start with a B. The B ones went to the bank. The A ones, or maybe vice versa, I don't know. The A ones stayed in Arrow, and they were the real invoices. So the bank was essentially paying them a whole bunch of money. They had one woman that they were forcing to do for them. So basically falsifying. It was fraud. It was actually wire fraud. It was bank fraud. They were doing this just so that the bank could call back and check on the invoices. They would assign invoices to different employees in there. The phone numbers on the invoices for the customers would actually ring back to Arrow, and the employees were instructed to answer the phone in whatever trucking company they had said and confirm that, yes, this load had taken place. Yeah, good people here. Real good people. So, obviously that can't go on forever. And this was 2008, 2009, which was a bad time for trucking anyway. Although there are analysts that say that even in the best conditions in trucking, the best income, if trucking was at the top, Arrow never could have survived with the amount of spending that they were doing, to the tune of like $90 million. So let's talk about when they fell. The date the company went down officially was December 22nd, 2009. 3 days before Christmas, you'll notice. And it's the way they shuttered their operations that was the tragedy in the trucking industry. Their failure was inevitable under such an idiot. I've said before, I don't call names on this, but I don't know how not to call him that. Yeah, so they shut down 3 days before Christmas. The problem is they didn't have fuel cards anymore. They made no arrangements for drivers to get home. They basically sent out notes that said, find the best way you can to get home. The other problem is they couldn't even spend their own money because they hadn't gotten paychecks. They did not realize that their last paychecks had not gone through. And I don't know how many weeks consecutively it was that they didn't get their paychecks. So 3 days before Christmas, all over the country, drivers are stranded. OIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, stepped in and they put together a Facebook page so that people could coordinate with other drivers to try to get these people home. A number of truck sales companies had said that if drivers could bring their trucks to them and they would arrange to get them back, and they would give them a bus ticket or $200 or however to get home. Basically, it was a huge outpouring in the trucking community of people trying to get these guys home, these guys and ladies home for Christmas or wherever they needed to be at that time, leaving them with no money by no fault of their own. They basically caused, I forget how many drivers it was at that point, but they basically caused them to be homeless. I mean, can you picture that? Broke, homeless, horrible situation for them. And luckily, yeah, just a big outpouring. So many people pulled through. While this is going on, Doug had just put up his 6,500 square foot mansion. Had just put that up on the market and moved to Dallas. The general counsel, Joseph Mallory, had moved to Houston, just within the last couple weeks, and did not even go down with their ship. Well, what happened then was the company was auctioned off and charges were filed against the three executives. Numerous charges. Some of them even ended up in the RICO Act because there were so many federal charges that were stacked against each other. So I forget what year it was. It took years, but Doug Pielsticker was convicted of tax fraud or tax evasion and was given 7.5 years in prison. He served about 3 years in prison, and then he was released during COVID. He was released to home confinement for 1 year. It wasn't clear where that home was at that point. And for 1 year, and now he's out and about. We'll talk about him in a minute. But his CFO, Jonathan Moore, got 5 years in prison and was ordered to pay $21 million in restitution. Although he says none of it was his fault. You have to read the book, trust me. And General Counsel Joseph Mallory, charges were dropped on him when he died on December 12th, 2011 at the age of 45 years old. It was originally thought maybe it was a suicide, but I did read that it was ruled a heart attack, so natural causes. So those charges were not pursued. I don't know where Jonathan Moore is these days. I didn't think he deserved too much of my time. But Doug Pielsticker is real easy to find. He has a website now. He is now a prison consultant. He consults people on how to deal with prison if they're sentenced and during prison and their families, and that's what he does. Let's check out his website. Well, here we are on the website. Here's the home. Yeah, it just says, "Are you in federal prison?" About us. President James Douglas Pielsticker. I'm Doug Pielsticker, the former president and CEO of Arrow Trucking Company in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Arrow was my family's business and it employed over 2,000 employees people with annual sales in excess of $250,000. During the Great Recession of 2009, Arrow struggled financially, and federal withholding taxes were not paid. Arrow filed for bankruptcy in 2010, and as a result, I was indicted by a grand jury in 2015. I pled guilty to tax evasion and conspiracy, and I was sentenced to 90 months in prison. For me, the most challenging and daunting part of my experience was the time before prison. The unknown worrying about my children's future, the difficulty of making a living, dealing with the press, talking to my friends, and feeling like I had lost my identity. Well, he goes through here and talks about all of his accomplishments and how great he is. I'm not reading it all to you. If you really care, you can go to his website. It's, what is it, Strategic Prison Consulting. Let's see what their services are. Our services, yeah, below is a partial list of items of preparing for prison, arriving in prison, healthcare, wellness, religion, work, prison activities, education, avoiding trouble and how to manage problems. Sentence reduction programs, stages of incarceration, and for families. He's a family man. He can help you with that. Jeez. Press, they did an article. I don't know, New York posted something. Yeah. Podcast. Apparently he never actually did anything on the podcast. And yeah. So there's the site. You know, I'm all about second chances, really. But, you know, he's in this website, he even says, you know, it was because of a recession. No, it wasn't because of the recession. Your company was going down long before that. You were driving it into the ground. You know, maybe his second chance could have been if he had gotten out and, you know, maybe tried to teach business, what not to do in business. You know, hey, I screwed my family's company, you know, and ran it right into the ground. And I was really stupid. And here's what not to do. You know, he did have opportunities. He knows what not to do in business. And sometimes that would be great training. But nope, he's not that guy. He's still a typical rich playboy that, you know, nothing was ever his fault. Yep, he was screwed by the world. Sucks for him. Well, anyway, I'm done wasting time on this guy. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, the book is called, it's by Charles Hood. It's Big Rigs, Posh Digs, Fast Cars, and Dark Bars. I will put a link down below. It's a good read, and actually it's a good listen too. You know, I'm a truck driver. I listen to this on Audible while going down the road. So I will put a link down there for you. But thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you liked the video.